Good morning, Chairperson, members, Garrett Volendroff, staff and guests. The lobbies are open. Recording has begun.
Thanks, Dustin. Good morning, everybody. We'll convene the Washington State Liquor and Cannabis Board meeting for Wednesday, April 24th, 2024. Our first item today is a social equity project update, and I'm going to turn it over to Aaron Washington, who's the program manager, and he can lead us through this. Good morning.
Oh, that's right. Excuse me. Sorry about that. A little excited. There you go.
Oh, no, you're talking.
Not Aaron Washington.
Not Aaron Washington, but we are all here collectively. I had to run up quick to catch up.
Good morning, Nicola.
Okay. So good morning, Chairperson, Board Member Garrett and Volendroff. A team of us will be here presenting information today specific to the social equity program. We will share current outreach with applicants and how the process is going for the 40 that are processing for a retail application. We will share where we're at with the social equity reimbursement plan, specific outreach that is being planned for future state, launch industries, and then Aaron will be going over the proposed changes of the rubric today. So first, I would like to bring up Linda Thompson, who will be speaking about the applicants that are currently processing for a license.
Great.
Thank you, Nicola.
Good morning. So good morning, Chairperson, board members, Garrett and Volendroff. As Nicola mentioned today, I'll be providing, I'm Linda Thompson, Cannabis Manager in the Licensing Division. Again, as Nicola mentioned today, I'll be providing an update on the status of the current social equity applicants and social equity title certificate holders and their progress. So, next slide. One more. So of the 40 applications we have issued, 2 licenses thus far have been issued. 3 have secured a location and 35 are still going through the licensing process, which I will share a little more shortly. So next slide. So of the 5 social equity title certificate holders, 1 has been issued and licensed and 1 has secured a location and going through the licensing process as well. Next slide. All right, so this next chart shows shows the social equity applicants who are currently going through the process. You'll notice the different, so there was 40 of them, 33 have submitted documents. This was after the initial interview. 5 of those have secured a location and completed that interview. 4 of those submitted documentation for that location. For financing, 4 of those individuals also found secured financing and also submitted documentation. And again, 2 of those have been issued. So those numbers that reflect documents received for location and then the documents received for financing also includes those 2 that were issued. Next slide. So this last slide here talks or speaks to the title certificate holders. So we have a total of 5 title certificate holders. 2 have completed their interview. 2 have also secured and a location and also financing. And 2 have also submitted documentation. And this also includes the 1 that has been issued. And now, that was a pretty brief update. It's pretty much been consistent with last time, but I will turn this over to Kelly.
Okay, good morning, Chairperson, members Volendroff and Garrett. My name is Kelly Hancock, and I am Program Specialist with the Social Equity Program. We launched the Social Equity Plan program in February of this year, on February 1st. And today, I want to provide you with an update on the work we've done so far. Since this program has launched, we have completed 76 one-time renewal fee reimbursements in collaboration with our customer service and accounting teams. We have returned 34 submissions to the licensees for correction. The reasons for correction varied, but the most common one we saw was when they submitted more than one plan per entity, which we are not allowed to reimburse. Of the 34 that we returned for corrections, we then received 21 back, so resubmitted with those corrections, which makes up about 60% of the total return plans, and that does contribute to the total number reimbursed, that 76. Next slide, please. So we've seen a variety of different social equity plans submitted to us, but as you can see on the screen, the majority of them have been to hire individuals with prior cannabis incarcerations or convictions. 23% of the plans have had multiple elements. Most of those also are for hiring individuals with prior cannabis convictions or incarcerations, but they also include additional elements. Most commonly are a variety of community projects, which we'll get into in a moment. The next largest chunk is food drives. So these are either through a different organization or they'll collect donations for canned food, non-perishables that they will then donate to a local organization. And then lastly, we have about 5% of these plans being community projects. So this is kind of a wide variety of different things. Although it's the smallest percentage, it sees the most variety. So these plans include things like community gardens, charity donations, art mural projects, and partnering with local and national organizations with a focus on social equity. So we're really excited by what we've seen so far, and we are looking forward to continuing to receive these social equity plans from our licensees and see what we keep getting. With that, I will turn it over to Sarah.
Hey, good morning. Next slide, please. Hello, Chair Postman and board members Volendroth and Garrett. My name is Sarah Davis, and I'm the Social Equity Case Manager, and I'm here to provide you with a brief update about Launch Industries, the contractor the Department of Commerce contracted with to implement their technical assistance, mentoring, and grant program. They are now in the process of launching their first 2 programs. The first round of grant applications is available for our first 45 applicants to apply for moving forward with the application process. And that window is happening now from April 1st to April 30th. And they have had several information sessions and contact with applicants to apply for that grant. Concurrently, they have opened up applications for their mentorship and consultants to provide technical assistance to that same applicant pool as well. That window is open right now from April 1st through 30th, 2024 for potential mentors or consultants. All of those information can be found on their website, which is launchmycannabiz.com. It's really easy. They also have an email, which is hello@launchmycannabiz.com. They've also been very responsive by call or text for applicants and those interested that have had questions. So all of those applications are on their website, and that is, they're receiving those until the 30th. The applicants are expected to receive the first grants by June 15th. So the first round of grant dissemination is scheduled for June 15th. And then after that, they'll be launching their second round of grants. And now I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Aaron Washington for an update on the rubric. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sarah. A good Wednesday to you, Chair Postman, Member Garrett, and Volendroth. Our goal today is to share the proposed changes to the social equity scoring rubric and request consideration of approval to share these changes with the community to seek further input. The rubric was initially introduced as a scoring tool to prioritize those most impacted by the war on drugs. The rubric was used by the third-party reviewer for the first group of social equity applicants under HB 2870. From that experience, we gathered information that has assisted in the suggested revisions I'll be sharing with you today. Feedback was given by applicants, with any concerns brought to our attention by email correspondence and telephone contact. We also received information from applicants who participated in the Social Equity Application Experience Survey. There were only 73 of 494 applicants who participated for us to gather information for suggested improvements to the program. Please be aware that the proposed changes have not been finalized, and these are only thoughts for improvements to the rubric. We would like to have additional feedback from the community from a period of 30 days. Community feedback could be sent to the licensing social equity inbox indicated on the last slide, which would then be shared with the policy and rules team. I want to thank the work group for their continued collaboration, which included the licensing team, rules team, the director's office, and the social equity team. We'll now begin our slides. The slides presented are a comparison of the current rubric language and scoring utilized under House Bill 2870, highlighted in blue, and is followed by the columns of the proposed rubric and scoring for Senate Bill 5080, which is highlighted in orange. Our thoughts for consideration are for the following. Category 1 and 1A to be combined as one question for an applicant to demonstrate they have lived in the disproportionately impacted area. A maximum of 40 points can be obtained for this proposed change. Category 2 and 2A to be combined, as well as Category 3 and 3A, each with the removal of the language cannabis from an applicant, for an applicant, or an applicant's family member to simply show having a drug charge. Documentation to distinguish a charge as being specific to cannabis was difficult, if not impossible, to find documents for. Category 4 did not receive any proposed changes to the current language. However, the point allocation is proposed for change. The sentence types would not include home confinement to garner any points. Home confinement is not allowed for any drug charge. A maximum of 30 points could be obtained for this proposed change, which would be an increase from the current allocation. Category 5 and Category 6 are proposed to be deleted. Applicants expressed documentation was either hard or that they could not get documentation at all to support the category. As a general note, convictions or arrests can affect access to employment and housing. Allocation of those points are recognized if an applicant or an applicant's family member has a record of a conviction. Dustin, will you take us to the next slide? Thank you. Category 7 did not receive any changes to the current language. However, the point allocation is proposed for change. No worries. Clarifying documentation by affidavit and W-2s were difficult to substantiate. A maximum of 15 points could be obtained for this category. Category 8 is proposed to base the criteria on applicants who owned a dispensary. This proposal would remove the language of operated. We noted that more dispensaries were common in lower income areas, and we look forward to community input about this proposed change. Category 9 is being proposed to remove the language of retailer and marijuana from the current rubric to reflect a state cannabis license in general. SB 5080 will allow for applicants to apply for retail as well as processor and producer licenses. A maximum of 15 points is proposed for this category, which would be an increase from the current points allocated. And finally, an additional category is being proposed for applicants who applied under HB 2870. The category considers issuing 15 points to those who met the qualifications but did not score high enough to be prioritized as an approved applicant. Nicola, would you like to add anything to that?
No, you covered that.
No, thank you very much for helping me out. Appreciate you. That concludes this presentation. We encourage the public to take note of the resources seen here on the last slide. And we look forward to the board's approval for community input. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Questions from the board? Member Garrett?
Hi, and this is more of a response than a question. Aaron and the social equity team, I just want to thank you all because being part of this and knowing the work and effort, the commitment and seeing the dedication that went into being thoughtful, thinking about what we were hearing from the community as what was the challenges in the last round and to try to come up with hearing their voice and creating something new. A lot of work went into that. And I really want to thank you all for that and looking forward to hearing now from the community of their input on what it is that we've come up with. I think, and I was saying yesterday on the survey, it was a little disappointing to hear that only 73 people out of over 400 responded to the survey. And this was us trying to hear from the folks, their input to in working on doing this rubric that we wanted to hear their voices. So to have only 73 people respond to the survey out of over 400 was a little disappointing. So I'm hoping once we put this out now for the hear from the community that we will get a response from a broader group. But thank you all for all of the work and stuff that went into this.
Thank you, Member Garrett. I appreciate that. Thank you. Whole team appreciates it.
Yeah.
I had two quick questions, I think, quicker. One, how much, on the social equity plan, how much is the application fee or the renewal fee that we refund?
It's 1,300 something.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Great. Good. Thank you. And then on one of the slides that Linda Thompson showed us, what you have 40 applicants have done a general interview and 33 have submitted documents. So we've got a delta of 7. Are those 7 just not in communication with us?
Of the 40 that submitted documents. So no, the
In
first
process?
interview was more of like educational. They just haven't submitted anything. Yeah. So
Okay.
for whatever reason that may be, but yeah,
Okay. We still communicate with them, reach out to them.
always.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Between the licensing specialist and the social equity team as well, it's constant communication.
Yeah, great. Okay, good. Thank you. Well, I don't have any other questions. I don't see any others from the board. Thank you all. I do think the work on the rubric was really good. I mean, the survey helped some. It was limited, but also you all did some great number crunching to look at everything that people had submitted under the current plan and what was utilized and what wasn't, and where the documents were submitted and where what. So I was really impressed by the level of detail you all put into it. It was really, really something. So, and I'm really glad that it's done in a way here that we're going to now turn it over to the community for their input. So I don't think the board has to take formal action. I heard Member Garrett say she looks forward to public input. I'm assuming Jim Vollendroff is with us there too. So go forth. That would be great. And we just really encourage the public to weigh in, either current applicants, if they have insights, or people who are looking at the next round, or people who have experience in the industry, whatever it is, it could be helpful for us. So, and we'll keep reminding you for that sort of input. Member Garrett?
Yeah, and I wanted to make sure that the community know the input need to come through the website, that we do hear when folks come to board meetings with their concerns and recommendation, but it's easier to track and to the work we're doing if it was put in the correct way on the website.
Yeah, that'd be great. Okay, good. Thank you all.
Thank you very much.
Okay, we will turn to rulemaking now and call on Cassidy West, our Policy and Rules Manager, to give us a timeline overview. Go ahead.
All right. Good morning, Chair Postman and board members Garrett and Vollendroff. I gave a pretty detailed update yesterday, and so I'm just going to go through the highlights for the next the coming up board meetings and then any engagements we're going to have. All right, so before I pass it to Daniel, who's going to present the request board approval today of the CR 102 for medical cannabis endorsements, as well as the CR 102 for prohibited conduct, and then a CR 101 for the medical cannabis excise tax, and that's HB 1453. So before I do that, for the THC bill, so we had a workshop yesterday going over the packaging and labeling rules, and then some other changes that we've made to serving limits and transactions based on workshop feedback that we've received so far. And then we'll have on Friday, another workshop that will go over the testing changes and changes to cannabinoid additives. And then we will have a final workshop on May 2nd where we'll go through all the draft changes in all of the rule sections. We do welcome written comments still to our rules inbox. We'll accept those until May 15th. And then with that, we'll use all of that incorporated in the rules, and we're planning on filing or requesting board approval to file the CR 102 for that on June 18th. All right, so I'll move on to what else do we have next week? Okay, so next week, Jeff will be presenting a CR 105 to initiate expedited rulemaking to replace WLCB with LCB. He will also be presenting a response to a petition regarding actually that same change, and then also requesting that Title 314 be updated to include gender neutral language. Also, on May 8th, Daniel will be requesting board approval of a CR 101 for the flexible payment terms for cannabis businesses. And that week as well, we're planning to disseminate draft proposed rules for sampling. And I'll stop there to see if there's any questions.
Just one quick one I didn't think to ask yesterday. Why are we changing WSLCB to LCB?
This was a request. We started doing it actually before we got a petition in, and then that same week we got a petition, and so we also had some interest from member Bollendroff, maybe some other folks at our public hearings, and so there was just a lot of interest in doing it.
Okay.
I believe it's from the Liquor Control Board to the Liquor and Cannabis Board, so that's the change.
Well, no, that change has been made. What Cassidy said yesterday and today was Washington WSLCB
Right.
to LCB.
Dropping the Washington State. Yes. WSLC.
We'll follow up after.
Yeah, I don't think it's been
I'd love to
made.
see the petition.
When the prohibited conduct rule came up,
Yeah.
and I did a review of all of the WACs, there were several references to the Liquor Control Board still
Right.
in those, and so I thought that's what this change was about.
And that should be part of that review. I just don't understand
Right.
the drop in the WS, but if you could, I don't think I've seen that petition that you on the language change. Unless, I know I saw one on the general updating petition of the gender language, et cetera. If that's the only one I've seen it, but we need to figure out what we're changing there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I may have misspoke here. It is the Liquor Control Board. And that petition was the same one with the gender neutral language.
Okay.
I thought.
Okay. All right. Great. So we're not getting rid of Washington State.
No, we're still in Washington.
Good to know.
All right, great. And I can follow up to clarify as well.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So then let's move on. Okay, so on May 22nd, Jeff will be bringing a CR 101 to the board regarding the cannabis waste legislation. And then Daniel will be presenting a petition response for the ESOP petition that I mentioned yesterday. And then I'll just go through June really quick. So on June 5th, we'll be holding the public hearing for both the medical cannabis endorsement that Daniel will be presenting today, as well as the public hearing for prohibited conduct. And you know what? I didn't talk about social equity, and let me go ahead and do that. So we're planning on bringing the CR 102 on June 18th. So in the meantime, we'll be holding engagement sessions throughout the month of May. First, we're going to focus on getting feedback just on the rubric criteria, as well as documents to demonstrate eligibility. We'll use that feedback to inform finalize our draft proposed rules, which we will then hold engagement sessions to gather feedback on those. And so that is, I think, it through the month of June. Any other questions on that?
No,
Okay.
don't see.
All right, great, thank you. Oh, and I'll go ahead and pass it to Daniel. So,
Okay, great. And then
all right,
we'll
thank
get, Daniel Jacobs, who's in the house today, has a couple items to take us through. Good morning.
Good morning, Chair Postman, members, Garrett Vollendroff, and staff. My name is Daniel Jacobs. I'm a Policy and Rules Coordinator. Normally, you see me on screen, but I'm here IRL in real life. I have three things to present, and this morning I'm going to start with requesting approval of a CR 101 for rulemaking to implement substitute House Bill 1453, which has created a temporary exemption from the cannabis excise tax for medical cannabis patients purchasing under certain conditions. So if approved today, there's going to be an informal comment period until May 29th. And we plan on holding two stakeholder engagement sessions the following week on June 3rd and June 5th. Following those stakeholder engagement sessions, we tentatively plan to file proposed rules by June 18th. Following the rule filing, there's going to be a formal comment period until the public hearing, again, tentatively to be held July 31st. Assuming that goes well, the final rules would be filed August 14th, which would have these rules in effect September 14th. I'm going to be talking about medical cannabis endorsement proposed rules after this presentation, but I do just want to clarify that while both presentations relate to medical cannabis, these are two separate projects. Substitute House Bill 1453, passed during the most recent legislative session, exempts qualifying medical patients issued a recognition card from the cannabis excise tax until June 2029 if they purchase cannabis under the following conditions. One, like I just said, the purchaser has to be either a qualified patient or their designated provider, and then, so they have to be issued a recognition card. They have to be purchasing from a retailer with a medical cannabis endorsement, which is part of what ties into my next presentation. And then additionally, they have to be purchasing cannabis that complies with Department of Health rules in Washington Administrative Code 24670. Additionally, as part of the 101, we want to be able to address some minor technical changes that may already exist in some of these rules that we're going to be addressing to sort of make Chapter 314.55 consistent. We're not trying to turn this rulemaking into also a whole technical overview, but we want to have the flexibility where if we're looking at a section that we need to amend and it has some language that refers to a prior traceability system or just other things, we want to be able to have the flexibility to fix that too while we're at it, rather than have to do a whole separate rule project. I'm just clarifying that here because that was something that wasn't mentioned yesterday, but I did, just for transparency's sake, want to mention that.
Great.
This rulemaking will likely require coordination and collaboration with both the Department of Health and Department of Revenue. We've already had some meetings with those folks and we'll continue to do so. We'll be sharing the proposed rule language with them because they're also going to be, heavily involved in implementing this legislation. Based on this, I'm hereby requesting approval of the CR 101 to begin rulemaking on implementing substitute House Bill 1453, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions on this first one? No. If not, then is there a motion to approve the CR 101 regarding substitute House Bill 1453?
This is Ali. I move we approve.
And this is Jim, I second.
Great, thank you. So that's approved. Thank you.
All right, that's great. One down, two to go.
Okay.
So, good morning again. Long time no see. I'm going to be talking about the CR 102 on the medical cannabis endorsement rulemaking. If approved today, there will be a formal comment period until July 5th, where we'll have the public hearing. Up until that time, so between now and, sorry, not July 5th, June 5th. Up until June 5th, public is encouraged to submit comments on this proposed rule language. They can do so to the rules inbox, which is rules@lcb.wa.gov. And obviously they can come to testify at the hearing itself on June 5th. After the public hearing, assuming everything goes well, the final rules are tentatively scheduled to be filed during the June 18th board meeting. And again, assuming that goes well, the rule changes will be in effect by July 19th. This rule project comes about after the board accepted a petition submitted by John Kingsbury in March 2023 to address medical cannabis endorsements, and the CR 101 was filed in October. While the petition was asking to amend WAC 314.55.020 and 080, 020 is more of a general licensing regulation, and given the approach that we're taking to enforcement and noncompliance overall, we don't think that 020 actually needs to be amended, and I'll explain why in just a second. The draft rule amendments are a result of, collaboration with my great rules team, circulated to our partners at Department of Health, Agriculture, and Ecology, with especially close collaboration with Department of Health. We posted the draft rule language on the website towards the end of February, and we had 2 stakeholder engagement sessions on March 11th and 14th, during which we received mostly positive feedback, some occasional not as positive feedback, but mostly positive. As identified in the memo in the CR 102 form, there are sort of 3 main changes that we're doing with the proposed rule. The first one is to create an hours posting requirement. And so what this is proposing to do is to say that whenever a store or retailer has to post their store hours, they also have to post the cannabis consultant hours. Due to lots of discussion during the stakeholder sessions on the idea of consultants being available by appointment, there are some folks that were like, can't you just say consultants available by appointment? But the problem with that is that the current situation that we've heard from stakeholders is that they don't know when consultants are available. So they have to call up the store and say, when are your consultants available? If you just say consultants are available by appointment, that's kind of the same thing where they're gonna have to call up to make an appointment. But on the other hand, we also heard concern that it was like, well, if we just say, if you have consultants sort of reserved for a block of time, there's concern that they won't be able to do anything else during that time if they don't have an appointment. So to strike a balance, we're proposing that you can either post the hours or you can say, post sort of a window that appointment is available by. So the example I thought of was, you can say consultants are available from 1 to 3, or you can say consultants are available by appointment from 1 to 3. Alternatively, if a store says, hey, consultants are in on Fridays, or consultants are available by appointment on Fridays. That way you strike the balance of having predictability for the consumer, and the patient doesn't necessarily need to call up. But on the other hand, you also have consultants available to do other stuff that the business needs, so we're striking that balance. The second main sort of change we made is to the in-stock requirement. Currently, the in-stock requirement has language that talks about you have to have a certain amount in stock necessary to meet patient needs. There's a lot of folks have asked questions as to what exactly that means. But, and how much, this sort of created confusion about how much Department of Health compliant stock needs to be in order to meet patient needs. There's also concerns raised because some folks, with the current market, there isn't a whole lot of DOH compliant product out there. Hopefully that's going to change with 1453 implementation, but there are some concerns raised about stores on the east side of the state that maybe had issues with, supply getting over the pass. And so, technically if they don't have anything in stock, they're out of compliance. So we're proposing changing the language to say that you have to have it in stock or on order. And that's something that can be verified as simple as showing an order form, saying, hey, I placed an order there, my suppliers, all out or backed up or something happens. And I do want to also say this was something that was suggested in part during the stakeholder engagement session. So I just want to sort of add that out there. And then lastly, and this is sort of gets to why we don't think we need to change O2O at this time, we're proposing adding in language about what we're calling a cure period, which is a period of time to address non-compliance before the endorsement is going to be subject to discontinuance. As sort of came up during the petition process, in theory, if an endorsement holder is non-compliant with the rules, they're immediately ineligible for the endorsement. So they have to have a consultant on staff, they have to have a card reader machine, they have to have supply in stock. If their consultant quits or gets fired or whatever, technically they're immediately out of compliance. If their card machine reader breaks, if they're out of stock. This is sort of saying, or instead what we want to do is we want to say, hey, we're going to identify a period of time on the notice to correct that says, hey, you don't have anything in stock. You have a week to place an order or whatever it is. And the reason we want to we don't identify how long that cure period is because it's going to depend on the violation or the non-compliance. It's going to take longer to hire a new cannabis consultant and get them certified than it is to place an order or to fix a machine. However, we also want to identify, we still need to have requirements. And if a retailer isn't able to comply with those requirements, then, we still need to have a process where we say, listen, you shouldn't have the endorsement. And so that was sort of the main thrust of Mr. Kingsbury's petition in the first place, was identifying a clear structure and sort of step-by-step process laid out where retailers and endorsement holders know what's expected of them, but also know that if they get out of compliance, sort of how much time they have to return to compliance.
We're saying we're not going to put in the actual numbers for how many days they have.
So we put in a range because currently, based on current enforcement consultation with enforcement, currently they're given 5 days. The initial sort of discussion was talking about giving them 30 days, but they're sort of back and forth of saying, well, you don't really need 30 days just to place an order. Right. But on the other hand, you do need more than 5 days to hire a consultant. And so the rule language says between 5 and 30 days, but it's the amount of time sort of identified on the notice to correct.
Okay, so the compliance consultant would determine that period, case by case.
Exactly.
Okay.
And then after that period, if they're still out of compliance, then the endorsement would be discontinued. But to clarify, after that, they can still get the endorsement back. This is more of one of the minor changes, which is if you lose the endorsement after getting one of these notices and not being able to fix the issue, and you're like, okay, well, I'm going to apply to get my endorsement back or get the endorsement again. In addition to submitting your regular endorsement materials, you're going to have to submit something extra to licensing to say, hey, well, have you fixed the issue that was the issue the last time? And again, we haven't specified what that's going to be because it's going to vary depending on what the issue was. If the issue was the card machine, submit some sort of proof that you fixed your card machine. If the issue was the consultant, submit proof that you've got the consultant. So like I said, so the more sort of rehabilitative approach to noncompliance obviates the need to make amendments to O2O, which is why those aren't in the proposed rule language, because we're taking, we're putting in the cure period language. We did get some draft rule language submitted to us by the Cannabis Alliance, and I've attached that submission to the memo. We've got some comments from folks during the 101 period and following. I've also attached those to the memo. And as identified in the 102 form, there's going to be some cost to compliance for retailers because they're going to have to change their signs outside those stores. We estimate that to be about $1,000 generously, but during the small business economic impact statement process, we calculated sort of that threshold cost to be $3,300. So even if the cost to add to the sign was $2,000, it's still below the cost necessary for a small business economic impact statement. We think these rules strike a good balance between ensuring that retailers are better able to serve patients, patients are better able to plan and be served, and anticipate when those services will be provided. And lastly, we think that we've addressed really the bulk of Mr. Kingsbury's petition about identifying a clear process for endorsement holders and when those endorsements get discontinued and how they can go about returning to compliance. Because the goal here isn't to not have medical cannabis endorsement holders, but our goal is to make sure that those who do have an endorsement actually meet their requirements. So therefore, after all of that, I'm requesting approval of the CR 102 on the medical cannabis endorsement rulemaking, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
I don't see any questions, so entertain a motion to approve the CR 102 for medical cannabis endorsements.
This is Jim. I make a motion that we approve the CR 102 for medical cannabis endorsements.
In a second.
This is Ollie, I second.
Great. And that is also approved. Thank you. And we'll go back to you, IRL, one more time.
All right. Yeah, I was gonna say, third time's a charm.
Yeah.
So now we're going on to everyone's favorite topic, the prohibited conduct rulemaking. So if I'm requesting approval of the CR 102 today, if approved, it's got the same timeline as the medical cannabis endorsement rulemaking I just talked about. So the public hearing will be June 5th. There'll be formal public comment period until June 5th. If the hearing goes well, I'll present the final rules on June 18th, and those will be effective July 19th. You are all familiar with the history of this, but I'll go over it again. We filed the 101 on February 14th, initially addressed at considering repealing or amending the prohibited conduct rule. Engrossed substitute Senate Bill 6105 pointed us in the direction for us to make, saying that we should repeal the rule. And not only that, that we shouldn't put in any rule like it, that we can't have or enforce a rule that restricts exposure of body parts or otherwise restricting sexually oriented conduct. Well, we initiated the CR 101 with the express goal of exploring whether to amend or repeal it. Like I said, the legislature told us to go for repeal. As such, the rules that I'm proposing to file today do exactly what 6105 tells us to do. We're repealing 314.11.050. And while we're at it, we're also removing references to it, because if we don't have that rule, there's no point having other rules that point to it. There's 6 other rules that reference it. 3 of those are penalty tables, which are basically exactly what they sound like. If for certain entities, if you violate a rule a certain number of times, they identify the penalty for it. So for several of these entities, they say, what if you violate the prohibited conduct rule? Obviously, we're going to remove that row from the table. And I can just go through each of the rules. One of them is about what events require advance notice to the board, events that have people that may be exposing, violating the prohibited conduct rule. Again, no need to do that. The disorderly conduct rule at 314.11.015 sort of had a parenthetical in the last sentence saying, look at the prohibited conduct rule for more information, which you don't need to do. The masked penalty table, again, someone who has a masked permit, in theory, violated the prohibited conduct rule. Group 1 violations table, and then for sports venues, also the Group 5 violations table. These are all penalty tables, but again, it's the same basic thing. Doesn't matter whether people violate this rule anymore because it's not going to exist. And then there's also a rule in the advertising about signs, talking about people wearing costumes. And it said, people can wear costumes for signs, but the costumes can't violate this rule. Obviously, since the rule doesn't exist, they can do what they want. Regarding cost, this rule change isn't going to cost anything because we're removing restrictions, not adding them. Now, in theory, licensees remain free to still enforce these rules if they want to. It's just, it would be a licensee policy instead. They don't have to change their rules. So it's not as though it's like, oh, I have all these signs up that say you can't do this. I have to change those signs. It's like, well, you don't have to, but you can also take them down. It won't cost you anything. And so the last thing is, while we were planning on holding some sort of extensive stakeholder engagement, again, the legislature's told us what to do on this, so we didn't do that prior to this rule language, but we have gotten a lot of stakeholder feedback regardless. We've gotten 22 separate comments into the rules inbox. We've had testimony at 3 public board meetings, all but 1 have supported repeal. And I've also attached the public comment table to the memo here. If approved, like I said, there's going to be another formal public comment period. I anticipate we'll get more public comment during then. But based on that, requesting approval of the CR 102 on prohibited conduct rulemaking, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Right. Questions or comments before we vote on the board? No? Okay. With that then, is there a motion to approve the CR 102 regarding WAC 314-11-050, known as prohibited conduct?
This is Jim. I move that we approve the CR 102 regarding prohibited conduct WAC.
And this is Ali, I second.
Great, and that is approved. Thanks, Mr. Jacobs. Thanks for all that work.
All right, thank you.
Appreciate that. Okay, we are to the part of the meeting for public comment. We'll start with people that are online virtually. Everyone has up to 4 minutes to speak. As always, I ask that people limit your comments to LCB business and refrain from anything too far off topic, and certainly refrain from any sort of personal attacks. And a little more specifically on that, we did get a quick update today on what the Department of Commerce is doing. And I would just urge members of the public who are testifying to not use your time to talk about the Department of Commerce. We really don't have control over it, and we want to keep our comments in this meeting as confined as possible to LCB business. So I really ask you to think about that, and I'll remind you to think about it if you don't. Those in the room here, as always, the microphones are very sensitive, picks up any kind of side conversations or rustling paper, so please take anything that you need to talk about outside. The meetings, like all, are being recorded. It'll be available online today. Those that are online testifying, we've got 3 of you. Just as normal, just give us a second after I call your name, and Dustin will connect you and you'll get your 4 minutes once your mic is on. So with that, let's start. The first person we have signed up is Sammy Sott.
Good morning, Chair. Sammy registered to speak, but is not online today.
Okay, thank you. Then we'll move to Christopher King.
All right.
Okay.
Pepper, quiet, honey. Quiet, honey. 1 second. 1 second. Okay, I am ready.
Okay.
Great morning, guys. Just want to talk about a couple of things here. Pepper, quiet. First of all, I want to point out to you, this is a nickel. Independently, it's not worth much. And most of us don't treat it as if it's worth much. But when you put 2 nickels together and you keep adding those nickels can have power. All right? Such as with Peter Manning and me. Because you treat us like nickels. Case in point, just the other day, just a few minutes ago, look at the GLBTQ community, all right, of which I am adjacent to, given that my partner is a member of that community. And I'm good with that. We have pride flags at this house. But when they have a problem, things get addressed promptly, all right? Nichols been waiting for years. And as to this rubric bit that you were just talking about, it's ridiculous. Don't act surprised now. I've got emails to Jim Buchanan back in the day when I said, Jim, this was January 25th, 2022. I'm talking with Kevin Shelton. And I said, look, these were business licenses that were still wrongfully taken. These are, of course, multiple stories. I'm talking about a distinct, identifiable class of people here. All right. And that was way back then. So you don't need to hear this information on the portal, as Ollie was saying. That's ridiculous. I've been telling it to you for years. Well, a number of people, Peter, everybody's been telling you that. All right. And now all of a sudden it comes up out of the blue 11 years later? Please. I want to congratulate the LCB on being exactly what this country exemplified when George Washington, our founding fathers, started this sham. All right. Do you realize 6% of the population voted when George Washington became president? Yes. So you embody all of that, all of that oppression, that corruption, that racism, that hegemony. That's what you do. All right. And the analogy is clear. The 6% rule things. Same with your cronies here. All right. I was telling it the other day at HempFest. and I'll go right back to Khalifa, one of your besties, all right? This is a letter from your attorney, Kim O'Neill, an AAG, just like I was, all right? She says, the other thing you need to know is that Anya and I met with 2 FBI agents who are carrying on a year-long investigation of Mr. Whitmer and the various financial transactions he's been involved in would turn your hair white. He's involved in bank fraud that has cost the depositors millions in losses. He's involved in laundering money for drug transactions. And the agents say they're somewhere between 6 and 12 months away from federal charges that will put him away for a while. Now, funny, that never happened, but my nickel, Kevin Shelton, got kicked out, and Breon Corbray, my other nickel over here, had Jenny Durkin barking up his behind and threatening him and making him take a plea bargain because he's a nickel and worthless to you. And you have proved that empirically, okay? I'm gonna tell it. Listen, you also, just now you're talking about this 2870 money. You don't want to talk about what Commerce is doing, but y'all lied about that money too, all right? That's crazy. I know Peter and those guys had to force Commerce and you guys to admit that there was more money out there. All right, that's ridiculous. And you come back to the Dennis Turner narrative. You keep trotting him out. I see another story with Ollie and Dennis Turner in the news on 420 also.
Christopher, you have 30 seconds.
And that's ridiculous, okay? And meanwhile, you got all these guys out there having turf wars, all right? I'm telling you, these little break-ins and these vandalisms, it's just turf wars. And yet it's ironic because for all these years, it's nickels who were doing hard time for the little marijuana turf wars. And now you turn the whole thing upside down on its head. It's insane. You keep your nickels. Goodbye.
Okay, the next person we have signed up is Peter Manning. You should be able to go ahead.
Can you guys hear me?
You bet.
Good morning.
Can't see you, but we can hear you.
Okay, yeah, my camera is, yeah, I don't know why that is.
Okay. We can hear you fine though.
So, good morning, Postman, Chair Postman, and Board Member Ollie Garrett and Board Member Valendroff. My name is Peter Manning, President of Black Excellence Cannabis. I'm glad to see things are moving forward. I will say that I have some things to mention. Launch, apparently, whatever website Launch has set up for the bids, for the social equity applicants to put their bids in, that information is being shared online. Like if you were a social equity applicant and you had a bid you were putting in, everyone is allowed to see that. I don't think that's fair because of privacy issues, your competition, and in this industry is very, for the newcomers coming in, there's a lot of predatory people out there that currently own the industry. I think that should probably be corrected. My second thing is, I was looking at the rubric you guys are proposing. Once again, if you take a person that was affected on a greater scale and he meets all the requirements of being affected by the rubric, and then you take a group that takes, say, 10 of those people to meet the same requirements, how is that equality and how is that fair to that one person who suffered the most to be moved to the side because 9 people met the qualification? It's like the person that is greatly affected by those policies should be rewarded above them. That's my second one. And as far as the Buyers Forest program, that actually was launched back in February. The social equity applicants didn't get wind of that until last month, in March. I would like to know why that was. And then there's problems with that with the for us, by us, or by us, for us. The people that it's designed for are putting in their application, and that department is not getting back to them. Some people are filled it out. There's no transparency there. I'm not sure what that's about, and I'm going to get more information on that, but I think that needs to be corrected. I did read the article with Ollie Garrett and Dennis Turner in it. I'm very proud of the brother up there in the north. Ollie Garrett did say that the program is a failure from her eyes, from what I read, my perception of what I read. This is where I'm at with this whole thing. We got to listen to the community more. about how we move forward with 5080. That's just my personal take. That rubric I just seen, that's not going to do it. Now what we're going to do is we're going to mobilize our communities. We're going to start working together to combat these issues, and hopefully we can work with you guys to combat these issues. Keep in mind that in 2015, Black people and brown people, even though they were qualified, were cut out. Whereas white people that didn't have any of the qualifications were given those stores. And now, listen to what we created. We created a bunch of white retailers that are currently doing turf wars, burning each other's signs, placing bombs out front of the locations, having other kids ram in stores to cut back on the competitor's business, having various
Peter, you have 30 seconds.
Places raided and robbed of their product. It's surprising that we have that level of corruption. And maybe it's because we were started this program with corruption. So maybe we should be looking at what's going on with this industry. That's just my take on it. Thank you for your time.
Mr. Mayor, I'll just point out what I was talking about at the beginning of the comment. For Department of Commerce in the future, talk to them about that. We're just trying to keep these conversations here focused on what LCB can do. Those are not our projects, not our programs. So again, just a reminder for everyone, we're really going to try to streamline in a way the public comment period. So we're only talking about things that LCB has anything to do with. We have one person signed up in the room for comment, Polly Merwin.
Hi, I don't know everybody's names, first
Okay.
time here. My name is Polly Merwin. I am a very proud owner of Brock's Bar and Grill in Woodland. I've submitted a statement with documentation of the things that I'm talking about today. I'm gonna really try hard not to read this, you guys. I have a separate outline, so I'm just gonna do it the best I can. I have worked in restaurants and bars for a total of 32 years. Never once had a violation. I chose to move to Woodland 5 years ago. And I was able to open up a bar that has always been my dream. I've been a full-time bartender my whole life, working for other people in the city of Portland. So I've always dreamed of opening my own place, maybe saving for retirement. As bartending, there is no career. We all left Portland, my adult children in their 30s, my granddaughter, my youngest that was 14. We all made a decision as a family to move up here to Washington and create a different lifestyle for us, as we're used to the city. And we just wanted more of a down-to-earth type of thing. So when I tell you a little bit about my bar, it's a very small business. I opened 3 days before COVID. Very unfortunate. It's been a struggle since day one. When I opened the bar, I introduced myself to police, health inspectors, and the LCB. I introduced myself in person as I wanted everybody to know who I am. I've never had any issues. I had a great relationship with LCB prior to my current officer, Roy Ryan. Somebody filed an anonymous complaint against my restaurant. I can't talk about the details as we're in the process of settling the matter. The reason I am here is that my staff and I feel like we are being harassed when all we are trying to do is stay compliant. I always believed the Liquor Commission was here to educate, and I'm not finding that to be the case. Another restaurant received a complaint like mine in the same general time period. The owner was drinking all day on duty, over serving every day. The enforcement officer, one of the same who responded to the complaint regarding my business, called and set up an appointment with the owner at 4 p.m. before dinner rush. He had a conversation with that officer, called it cordial and forthcoming, and the officer recommended the complaint be closed as unsubstantiated. The LCB never went and checked that restaurant again, whether at night or during the day. The anonymous complaint, the owner was drinking all day on duty and serving minors. I did not receive a phone call. Nobody asked me for a meter. Instead, the LCB, including the officer that chatted with the other restaurant, set up a sting at 10 p.m. at night with an underage purchaser and sent them in to order a beer in the middle of an incident where a patron was thrown out of the bar.
Can I just try not to talk about the actual case?
Okay,
because
okay.
the board has to sit in. Yes.
Okay, so after that, the LCB came and banged their badges on the window at 2 a.m. It freaked my staff out. I'm not sure that I want them opening the door that time of night, as I know, and this is the second time that it's happened. They don't go to the other restaurant ever, but they visit us at midnight and even past 2 a.m. I have had multiple visits from the LCB
Polly, you got
after
30 seconds.
after 2 sting operations in my bar, some with very extenuating circumstances. I don't feel I'm being handled with grace. I feel that I am being harassed. I have a lot more to say. Obviously, I don't have time, but I just wonder what you guys do when these anonymous complaints are coming in. If you compare the verbiage or whatever, I am not a drinker. I run a very responsible bar. My bar is set so high that it's hard for my bartenders and everybody to achieve.
Polly,
with
that's your time.
customers.
If you do have something written, have you submitted that to us already?
I did.
Okay, great.
I
We'll make sure-
need help. I just need to be treated fairly.
We'll make sure that enforcement sees that as well. So
Okay,
we'll follow
thank you
up.
very much.
Thank you. Appreciate your time today. That is our last item today, and so we will adjourn the board meeting for today. We'll be back next week for caucus.